Never thought I'd be the girl who had to burn her own life down just to breathe, but when you're cornered by people who think they own your identity, fire is the only thing they understand. Imagine being told every single day that because of the way you look, the way you talk, or where your family comes from, you are only allowed to exist in a tiny, suffocating box of stereotypes. They didn't just want me to fail. They wanted me to become the caricature they had drawn in their heads. And when I refused to play the part, they made my life a living hell. I'm talking about systematic, cruel, and relentless bullying that pushed me to a breaking point I didn't know existed. By the time I was done with them, the entire school board was involved, reputations were shattered, and I was standing over the ashes of their social status. Was I wrong for recording their every move and orchestrating a downfall so public they had to move towns? Or would you have done the exact same thing if you were being erased in broad daylight? I need you to listen to this and tell me if my revenge went too far, because honestly, I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. It all started when I transferred to St. Jude's Academy in my junior year. My parents had finally saved up enough to move us into a better school district, thinking they were giving me a head start in life. They had worked double shifts for years, my dad at the warehouse and my mom cleaning offices, sacrificing every luxury just so I could have a diploma with a prestigious name on it. But from the moment I walked through those double doors, I realized that better just meant more expensive clothes and more sophisticated cruelty. I'm a first-generation student, and my heritage is something I've always been proud of. It's etched into the recipes my mom makes and the stories my dad tells. But to the A-list at St. Jude's, led by a girl named Chloe and her two shadows, Mia and Sarah, I wasn't a person, I was a trope. On my first day, Chloe walked up to me in the cafeteria, looked at my homemade lunch of spiced chickpeas and flatbread, and made a comment about how it smelled exactly like she expected it would. It was a small jab, delivered with a perfected pearly white smile, but it set the tone for the rest of the year. They didn't just pick on me, they tried to force me into a role. Chloe would constantly suggest that I should join the ESL club or the remedial English program, even though English is my first language, and I had a higher GPA than she ever would. She'd say it with this fake concern, like she was doing me a favor by pointing out my obvious struggles. They would leave tacky, stereotypical accessories in my locker. Cheap plastic jewelry, neon-colored fabrics, and even how-to guides on basic etiquette. With notes saying things like, "This suits your kind better," or "Why are you trying so hard to look like us? Just embrace your roots." It was constant. Every time I tried to sit in the library to study, Sarah would giggle and ask if I'd practice my accent in front of a mirror to sound civilized for the teachers. The atmosphere at St. Jude's was thick with a kind of passive-aggressive elitism that made it impossible to breathe. I remember sitting in history class when the teacher, Mr. Henderson, was talking about socioeconomic shifts. Chloe raised her hand and, looking directly at me, asked if the school could provide a simpler version of the textbook for those who weren't used to academic rigor. Mr. Henderson didn't reprimand her. He just chuckled and told her to stay focused. That was the moment I realized the teachers weren't just oblivious. They were complicit. They saw these girls as the daughters of the town's elite, the donors who paid for the new gym wing and the state-of-the-art auditorium, so they turned a blind eye to the teasing. It made me feel invisible, like I was a ghost haunting a building I paid to be in. I started eating my lunch in the stairwell, hiding away so I wouldn't have to face the judgmental stares or the whispered comments about my exotic features. My grades stayed high, but my spirit was eroding. I would go home and scrub my skin until it was red, wondering why I couldn't just blend in, why I had to be the target of their twisted social experiments. My parents would ask how school was, and I'd lie through my teeth, telling them it was great, because I couldn't bear to let them know their sacrifice was buying me nothing but misery. I'd sit in my room for hours, staring at my science textbooks, trying to find a world where logic and reason mattered more than the brand of my shoes or the color of my skin. I began to notice the small, daily humiliations that others might miss. It was the way the gym teacher always picked me last, assuming I wasn't athletic by nature. It was the way the school counselor suggested I look into vocational schools rather than Ivy League universities, despite my 4.2 GPA. Every interaction was a brick in a wall they were building around me, designed to keep me in my place. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of beige polyester and forced smiles. But things escalated from comments to full-blown sabotage as the science fair approached. I was a straight-A student, and I lived for the science fair. It wasn't just a hobby, it was my ticket to a full scholarship, something I desperately needed because my parents couldn't afford a private university. I had spent 6 months on a complex biology project regarding genetic sequencing and CRISPR technology. I had even managed to get an interview with a local university professor to validate my findings. I was the clear frontrunner, and Chloe knew it. She was used to being the best at everything by default, and she couldn't stand that a nobody like me was threatening her perfect record. One afternoon, staying after school to finish my calibration, I walked into the lab to find my entire display smashed. My glass vials were shattered, my digital data drive was missing, and "Go back to the kitchen" was scrawled across my primary research papers in thick, black permanent marker. I stood there, shaking, the smell of chemicals and broken glass filling my lungs. 6 months of work. Ruined because I didn't fit their idea of what a girl like me should be doing. Chloe walked by the lab window, not even hiding her smirk, and whispered through the cracked door that maybe I should stick to a more traditional path like culinary arts instead of trying to outshine people who were born for this. I remember the exact way the light caught the shards of glass on the floor, making them look like diamonds. A cruel irony considering they were the remains of my future. I didn't just feel angry, I felt a profound, hollow sense of betrayal. I had believed that if I worked 10 times harder than everyone else, the world would eventually recognize me. But at St. Jude's, hard work was just another thing they could take away from you. That was the moment something inside me finally snapped. The sadness, the insecurity, the feeling of being less than. It all evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I realized that as long as I played by their rules, I was going to lose, because they owned the rulebook, the referees, and the stadium. If they wanted a villain, I was going to give them a mastermind. I spent that night crying until my eyes were swollen, but by dawn, I was planning. I wasn't going to quit, and I wasn't going to move schools. I was going to document every single second of their bigotry, and use it to dismantle them piece by piece. I used some of my savings from a part-time job to buy a small, high-quality, voice-activated recorder, and a hidden camera disguised as a common USB charger. I set up the camera in my locker and kept the recorder in my pocket at all times. I also stopped fighting back visibly. I became the quiet girl they wanted me to be. I dropped my shoulders, I lowered my gaze, and I stopped answering questions in class. I acted submissive and hurt, which only emboldened them to be louder, bolder, and more obvious with their harassment. They thought they had finally broken me, and that's when they became truly careless. I practiced my victim face in the mirror, learning how to let my eyes well up with tears on command. It was a performance, a psychological operation designed to lure them into a false sense of absolute power. I watched them like a hawk, noting the times they congregated, the teachers who were most likely to look away, and the specific ways they targeted me. I was no longer a student. I was an undercover operative in a hostile territory. Over the next month, I collected a library of evidence that would make a lawyer's head spin. I had Chloe on tape in the locker room laughing with her friends about how she was going to talk to her father, who sat on the school board, to make sure the diversity hire didn't get into the honor society. I had high-definition video of Mia shoving me into the girls' bathroom wall while telling me to know my place and stop trying to act like I belonged in the top tier of the class. I recorded Sarah mocking my mother's accent after she saw us at the grocery store, calling us invaders who were ruining the town's aesthetic. They became so comfortable in their bullying that they didn't even care who saw it anymore. They thought they were untouchable, shielded by their parents' wealth and the school's reputation. They even started a group chat called the Janitor's Closet, which they accidentally added me to, just to flood it with memes and slurs that were so disgusting I felt sick to my stomach just reading them. Every notification was a new insult, a new way to remind me that I wasn't welcome. They were trying to break my spirit, to make me drop out or lash out so they could get me expelled for aggression. I documented the time Sarah tripped me in the hallway, sending my books flying, while a teacher stood 3 feet away and did nothing. I recorded the meeting with the counselor where she told me I should be more understanding of the other girls' cultural adjustments to having me in the school. I had hours of audio where they debated which stereotype would hurt me the most. It was a masterclass in organized hatred. In the weeks leading up to the gala, I watched them prepare. Chloe was obsessed with her dress, a custom-made silk gown that probably cost more than my family's car. She was going to give the student spirit speech, standing on that stage as the golden child of St. Jude's. Meanwhile, I was staying up until 3 a.m. every night, teaching myself how to bypass the school's antiquated server security, and how to script a video that would play automatically once triggered. I didn't just want to tell people what they did. I wanted them to feel it. I edited the footage with precision, overlaying their cruelest words with images of the damage they had done. I made sure every slur and every laugh was crystal clear. I even found old footage of the school's inclusion seminars and spliced it with the girls' behavior to show the utter hypocrisy of the institution. My heart would race every time I saw a teacher in the hallway, fearing they'd find the devices, but I kept my head down. I was a ghost in the machine. I spent hours in the local library, using their public computers to avoid any digital trail on my home network. I learned how to use a VPN, how to encrypt my files, and how to set a dead man switch that would release the video to the local press if my school account was ever suddenly deleted. I was preparing for total war. I watched Chloe practice her speech in the empty auditorium, her voice dripping with practiced sincerity about unity and community, while my pocket recorder captured every word of her mocking me during the breaks. So that was the nightmare I was living in every single day, and I had to make a choice. Do I let them win and become the stereotype they wanted, or do I risk everything to expose the truth? Before I tell you how the gala went down, and the look on Chloe's face when the lights went out, I want you to pause and comment below. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have gone to the principal again, knowing they'd just protect the donors, or would you have taken matters into your own hands like I did? Do you think recording people without their knowledge is justified when they're destroying your life? Let me know in the comments because I really want to see where you all stand on this. Your support is the only thing that kept me going during those dark weeks. The night of the gala arrived, and the air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and hypocrisy. I showed up looking exactly how they expected me to, quiet, unassuming, wearing a modest, off-the-rack dress. I looked in my place. The theme was the future of our community, which was incredibly ironic given how they treated anyone who didn't fit their mold. The ballroom was draped in velvet and gold, filled with the town's most powerful people clinking champagne glasses. The main event was a digital presentation showcasing student achievements. I had spent the previous night hacking into the presentation file on the school's main server. As the headmaster stood on the stage, a man who had ignored my 3 written complaints about Chloe's behavior, he began praising the school's commitment to inclusion, excellence, and the moral fiber of our youth. He hit play on the video. For the first 30 seconds, it was the standard propaganda, students playing sports, smiling in labs, and volunteering at food banks. The crowd was smiling, nodding along to the upbeat music. Then the screen flickered. The music cut out, replaced by a low, distorted hum that made everyone's skin crawl. Suddenly, the audio of Chloe and her friends filled the ballroom, amplified by the massive surround sound system. Her voice, clear as a bell and dripping with venom, rang out. If she thinks she's getting that scholarship over me, she's crazier than she looks. We need to remind her that people like her are only here to clean the floors, not run the world. The room went dead silent. You could literally hear a pin drop. Then a montage of the locker camera footage began to play. The shoving, the slurs, the smashed science project. The images of the go back to the kitchen graffiti flashed across the 20-foot screen for every donor and parent to see. I had included a side-by-side comparison of Chloe's public kindness versus her private cruelty. I stood in the back of the room, hidden by the shadows of a large floral arrangement, and watched as Chloe's father, a prominent lawyer who prided himself on his progressive values, turned a shade of purple I'd never seen before. Chloe herself was on the side of the stage, waiting for her speech, and she looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. The headmaster tried to shut it off, frantically hitting buttons on the podium, but I had looped the file and locked the system with a rotating password. I had also added a section showing the teachers' reactions, or lack thereof. There was Mr. Henderson, clearly visible in the background of a video where Mia was mocking my lunch, just laughing and walking away. There was the counselor's voice, recorded during our session, telling me that some people are just naturally more suited for leadership than others. It wasn't just the students on trial, it was the entire culture of St. Jude's. For 5 full minutes, the entire community sat in the dark, forced to witness the reality of what their prestige looked like behind closed doors. The video showed Mia laughing as she threw my backpack into the trash, and Sarah calling my parents uneducated peasants. It showed the teachers walking past the bullying, as if it were nothing. When the video finally ended, a single sentence appeared on the screen in white text. "Is this the future you're building?" The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. No one moved. No one spoke. The gala was over. The donors started leaving in droves, some looking disgusted, others looking terrified that their own children might be in the next video. I walked out of the ballroom before the lights even came back on. A strange sense of peace washing over me for the first time in months. I walked into the cool night air, the stars above me finally looking like they belonged to me too. The aftermath was a whirlwind of chaos and accountability. The video went viral locally within an hour. Someone had recorded the screen with their phone and posted it to the town's community page. The school couldn't sweep it under the rug this time because the evidence was too public and too damning for the school's brand. An emergency board meeting was called the next morning at 7 a.m. Chloe, Mia, and Sarah were suspended immediately. After a full investigation into the group chat, which I had exported and sent to the local newspaper, along with the names of everyone involved, and the physical harassment, they were expelled. But it didn't stop there. Because I had recorded the teachers ignoring the behavior, and had copies of my ignored emails to the administration, 3 staff members, including the headmaster and Mr. Henderson, were placed on administrative leave and eventually forced to resign. My science scholarship was not only reinstated, but the board offered me a full ride to any university of my choice as part of a settlement to avoid a massive civil rights lawsuit that my parents were now prepared to file. The local news ran the story for a week straight, calling it the St. Jude scandal. I became the face of a movement for school reform, but I didn't want the fame, I just wanted the peace. The social fallout was the most intense part. Chloe's family, who had been the royalty of the town, ended up selling their house and moving 2 states away. Her father's law firm lost half its clients because nobody wanted to be associated with a family that harbored such blatant bigotry. Mia and Sarah's families faced similar social ostracization. They wanted to turn me into a joke, a stereotype to be laughed at, but I turned them into a cautionary tale that the town would talk about for years. It wasn't just about revenge for me. It was about making sure the next girl who walked through those doors, maybe a girl who looked like me, or maybe just a girl who was different, didn't have to carry a recorder in her pocket just to feel safe. I learned that day that when people try to define you by a stereotype, the best response isn't to argue or cry. It's to excel so loudly and so strategically that their lies become deafening. My parents finally understood why I had been so quiet. And seeing the pride in my father's eyes when he saw me stand up for myself was worth more than any scholarship. He told me that he had always known I was a fighter, but he never realized I was a strategist. My mom just held me and cried, finally understanding the depth of the pain I had been hiding. We spent the next month as a family, healing and navigating the legal and social repercussions. I started a blog for other students facing similar issues, providing a safe space for them to share their stories. Looking back, some people in the town still say I was too cold, that I ruined those girls' lives over high school drama, and that they were just kids who made mistakes. But it wasn't drama, it was hate, and hate thrives when people stay quiet and let mistakes go unpunished. I didn't ruin their lives, their own actions did. I just provided the mirror. I'm sharing this because I want anyone else going through this, anyone being bullied to follow a stereotype or being told they don't belong, to know that you are not the labels people put on you. You are the architect of your own story. And sometimes you have to be the one to flip the script and burn down the old narrative to build something better. You have a voice, and it is powerful enough to shake the foundations of even the most prestigious institutions. Don't let them make you small. Don't let them tell you who you are. Like this video if you were on my side, and think those girls got exactly what they deserved for their cruelty. Subscribe for more stories like this where the underdog finally wins. and the bullies face the music. Please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Do you think I went too far by involving the whole town? Or was the public exposure the only way to get real justice in a system that was rigged against me? Your opinion matters to me because this story isn't just mine. It's a story for everyone who has ever been pushed to the edge. I'll see you all in the next story.